Outremont. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's with great interest that I listen to the speeches that preceded mine, and I think it'd be useful at this stage to remind our viewers of what brings us here tonight. For the past 3.5 years, we've had a minority Conservative government. Before that, we had a minority Liberal government. So, in other words, this is the third time in a row that Canadian voters across Canada decided to give a minority mandate to their government. This is a sign that the government expects that we should find a way to work together. So, we've just heard the Liberals talk to us about cynicism. The member for Toronto Centre said, well, you know, things aren't working anymore. People are too cynical about politics. Well, allow me to remind the member of certain very relevant facts.
The minister across the way made the point well before, Madam Speaker, in response to one of the Liberal members when he said that this is an attempt to make Parliament work. That is exactly what Canadians are expecting of their elected officials. The NDP has consistently stood up for its principles in voting for the things that the people who put us here have asked us to do. Now, let's look at what the Liberals have actually done in the past couple of months, Madam Speaker. They voted for a budget. These are the same Liberals who love to wave their index finger under other people's noses. They voted to remove a woman's right to equal pay for work of equal value. They voted to destroy the Navigable Waters Protection Act. We voted against it, and if this type of thing ever comes again, you know that we'll vote against it again. What is on the table today is $1 billion for employment insurance that the leader of the New Democratic Party was able to obtain when he held out his hand and said, we want to work in the public interest, we want to make Parliament function, we cannot go through a situation where Canada has an annual general election. So rather than spending $350 million on an election that nobody wants, that probably won't change anything, we're going to be putting $1 billion into the pockets of 190,000 Canadian families. That's what we were put here to do, Madam Speaker. I was listening before when the member for Papineau stood and he started talking about all his ancestors and his relatives who had been in this house. An old Irish expression that when the only thing you can talk about are your ancestors, you're a little bit like a potato. Everything that you have of interest is under the ground. But let's look at the actual dossier, the actual results of the Liberals on environment, shall we? Talking about cynicism and corrosive cynicism. They signed the Kyoto Protocol. I was listening as the member for Toronto Centre got weepy, got teary-eyed in his defence of the former leader, the one that he helped backstab. As he got teary-eyed about what a wonderful man he was. Let's look at what he did when he was Environment Minister, and let's look at what Eddie Goldenberg admitted the Liberals had done in signing Kyoto. In the spring of 2007, Eddie Goldenberg gave, the former Chief of Staff to Jean Chrétien,
I would urge the honourable member to be more cautious in his words regarding the intentions and actions of the preceding speaker. Of course, Madam Speaker, just for your edification, I was referring to the fact that he'd been in league to replace him, but when they ended up with is the one we have now. So what I was saying before your intervention was that indeed they signed Kyoto. Now, what did Eddie Goldenberg say in his book and his speech before the London Chamber of Commerce? He said this:
plan to institute Kyoto. We only signed it to galvanize public opinion. CQFD, they signed it for purely political purposes. It was a public relations stunt. And instead of having the record that they believe they have in environment, their real record in environment is the worst in the world. While the Liberals were in power for 13 years, instead of reducing greenhouse gases by 6%, as mandated by the Kyoto Protocol that the Liberals signed hypocritically, they increased Canada's greenhouse gas production by 35%. That's their record, the worst record in the world. And that, Madam Speaker, is political cynicism. That, Madam Speaker, above and beyond any other consideration, is the reason that the Liberals got turfed. They talk a good game. They'll say absolutely anything that they think needs to be said to get themselves elected. And once in power, they don't do a thing. We're supposed to feel that when they signed the Kelowna Accord, that was a great achievement. That was after 13 years and it gave nothing. And they're still crying today, saying that they really wish that they had had a fifth mandate so that they could continue to do nothing. I know about the Kelowna Accord. I was sitting in cabinet in Quebec City when it was signed. And you know what the Kelowna Accord was about? It was about the election of the Liberal Party of Canada. It was not about helping First Nations, because for 13 years they did nothing to help First Nations. That's the sad reality and the record of the Liberal Party of Canada. All talk, no action. They've never accomplished a thing. That's exactly what happened this summer, when they took one of their loudest and least productive members, someone who was passed over for cabinet in 3 successive majorities, stuck her in a room with their loudest and least productive member, and lo and behold, nothing happened. What was required to get a result on employment insurance for Canadians, for the families that need it? A responsible political party, the NDP, to stand up and say, we're fighting for Canadians. There are a lot of people who have lost their jobs in this economic crisis. Families need help. What are you going to do? We held out our hand. We discussed. We obtained $935 million for 190,000 families. And they're going to try to give us morality lessons? Not on your life, Madam Speaker.